All right. Good morning, everyone. So I want to point out a few things here in Desire to Learn. So I finally caught up looking at the lab work, and so my fervent plea to everyone is when you use that Dropbox to put in your reports, you can make my work a lot easier. If you name the report by having your name, then in parentheses scribe, and then the name of the driver, and then the name, then in parentheses driver. And if you could please try to make it a .text file. It's faster for me to open a text file than to open a doc or docx or whatever. And also, in the world of programming, it's kind of considered a polite thing to use plain text whenever possible, for the simple reason that, really for two reasons. One is that it's kind of a pain to have to deal with the word processor. And the other one is that programmers process information all the time, and information is more easily processed when it's in a plain text file, because you can read a plain text file easily with a Java program. If you wanted to read a Word document in Java, that is almost impossible because Microsoft has until very recently not published the format for Word files. So people try to reverse engineer it. And now they've published it in a somewhat obscure way that's still very ambiguous. And so it's genuinely difficult to process those files. So programmers tend to stay away from that kind of stuff. So plain text is good. I didn't say anything at the beginning because I didn't want to get everyone all riled up about saying you can't use your beloved Word or whatever. But if you could please use a plain text editor, Notepad will work just fine. Or you can use Word, just save it as a text file. That'll make my life so much easier. And yeah, if you name the file like that, then I can just look at the file name, and then I can record who was what. I was hoping to get my grader to do it, but he is so overwhelmed grading your homework that that's not happening. All right, tutoring. So I would really recommend, if you have difficulties with the homework, and if you do not have difficulties with the homework, then I have failed, because I'm trying to give you homework that is challenging and that makes you think about the stuff. When you have difficulty with your homework, do bring it to some of those tutors and see if they can give you a hint. See if there are other people there where you can just discuss it together. I'm perfectly okay with you doing homework, discussing it, getting ideas from each other, as long as the final work is yours. But there's nothing at all wrong with saying, I'm stuck here, this part works, this part doesn't, and getting ideas. And of course, use the good old discussion group here. I think those of you who have put in questions can agree that I tend to put in answers very quickly. And even if you're just generally kind of hunting around for ideas, read the discussion group and see what questions other people are asking. And I think some of them are bound to be inspirational. I mean, there are lots of people who are a couple of steps ahead of you and who are getting answers for their questions that give you really good hints. And that's perfectly fine with me. I want you to use that information. Finally, solutions. So I'm now getting into the flow of posting those solutions pretty quickly. So here's the solution for homework 8, for example. So have a look at those and compare them with your solutions. Particularly if you had trouble, then it should be kind of interesting to know how does the professional solution look like. And then have a look at, say, where did you get trouble, why couldn't you complete, and can you fix it up with what you can glean from the solution. For example, there were several people who put in comments that said their star didn't show up. They did everything humanly possible, but their star didn't show up. Well, when you run my program and the star does show up, find out which step did you miss. And it's really important that you close that loop, and only you can do that. I can't make you do that. I try to devise point schemes, but that's beyond my control. So take my solution, run it, compare it against yours, particularly if you were dissatisfied with yours. If you did a bang-up job and everything worked, then there's no worry. But if you didn't, if you got stuck somewhere and you submitted something that you knew not to be perfect, go ahead and do that. I do want to thank everyone who does submit the stuff even though it's not perfect. Every once in a while I get some people who don't submit anything at all because they're frustrating, and there are very, very few people in this class who do that. So you're doing the right thing by submitting what you have, whether or not it actually works, because it shows that you're working at it. So that's excellent. And there's only a couple of people who have not done that, and everyone else has, and that's much better than I usually get. All right, so see where we are with the schedule for today. Things are a little bit in disarray today because I have a visitor from a foreign continent who I have to shepherd through. So, and I have to be get a little bit creative with the lab. And oops, I didn't even make a Dropbox for the other lab. I suck. Okay. I made the same mistake as today. So in this in the lab today, we're going to be doing graphics programming. And I guess what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you do both labs in the afternoon, and unfortunately I'll only be here for a little while of that, and then you'll just have to kind of do it on your own. I have to leave at 12:30 to meet with that fellow, but hopefully that'll work out. And there isn't much else that I want to say about how to do graphical programming, so I'm just going to go for today's lecture. I'm going to jump ahead to the next chapter. Oh, the other thing I should point out is there's going to be an exam. When? I have no idea, but it's in the calendar. Yeah, and that's somehow sooner than we think, right? Let's get this calendar up. And month. October. Yes. So here, October 4th is exam number 1. So it's a 75-minute exam. It's on the computer, so you're bringing your laptops. You should bring your textbooks. It's open book, open notes. You can browse anything you want on the internet. I assure you that Googling will be a waste of time. But if you so choose, you can. So you're going to be using the BlueJ system, so you should have it on your computer. You don't strictly have to use it. You could just type up the solution and just hand it in. You're going to just put it on Desire to Learn in the usual way. But since you have BlueJ, you might as well see, does it compile, does it run, and fix it up until it does. When you do that, you should just use your time wisely and not just work all the time on problem 1. If you get stuck, move on to problem 2 and so on. There's going to be between 4 and 6 problems. We're not quite sure yet. We're still designing it. And they're all going to be where you have to read code, write code, think about code. There's not going to be anything where you have to memorize anything. After all, there's no point in memorizing stuff when you have Google and Wikipedia at your disposal. You may not, of course, interact with each other in any way. So no instant messenger, no email. That kind of goes without saying. And I will make sure that no one does that. All right, so there is a practice exam in the study and practice, whatever that thing is called, contents. So here, be sure to have a look at this. So that you have an idea of what these exams look like, since you were unlikely to have taken one in this format. Yeah, and have a look at that, this weekend, and don't wait till next weekend if the exam is Tuesday after next. All right, let's go on to chapter 4. So, the purpose of chapter 4 is really to deal with numbers and strings. Today we're going to be looking at numbers. You already know the distinction between integers and floating point numbers. The only new thing here is this exponential notation, where you have, like over here, 4.3 times 10 to the 24. The times 10 to is written as the letter E. That's because the keyboard doesn't have an easy way of doing superscripts and stuff. And then if you have it, 1e minus 14 would be 10 to the minus 14, 0.0001 with how many zeros? He says 12. I hear 13. Anyone in the room offering 14? The gentleman's raising his hand, and it's his at 14. So, oh, is it? No, it's 13. Right? Yeah, because if it's 10 to the minus 1, then you have no zeros, right? 10 to the minus 1 is 0.1. So it's 1 0 less. Yes. All right. So there's a bunch of other primitive types, meaning types that are not classes, and we don't normally care about them. So I'm just not going to say anything about it. Now it's important, you're going to be running into this, that when you manipulate floating point numbers, you're going to find that floating point numbers are not as precise as one would like them to be. So here's a typical example. When you take a number 4.35, and now you multiply it by 100, and you print out the result, you would think that 100 times 4.35 is 435. But it will actually print 434.999999 something. The reason is that the 0.35 cannot be accurately represented inside the computer when it uses the binary number system. It's kind of similar to in a pocket calculator. If you say f equals 1 over 3, and then you look at 3 times f, and then you're going to get something like 0.99999. Because on a pocket calculator, there's no exact representation for 1/3. It's 0.3333, and then it's not entirely exact. And so when you multiply back, then you lose a tiny amount of precision. You get the same thing with programming languages, except at spots that you don't quite expect. The pocket calculator could do this thing correctly because it uses the decimal system inside, but a computer uses the binary system, and you get this roundoff error. What can you do about it? And the answer is really not very much. That's just how floating point numbers work. And you have a couple of remedies if this bugs you. And a good remedy is often to use integers. In this case, if this was like a prime